Hello, you astonishing sea lion. Welcome to Jason Arnott's terrifying House of Obsession, which this time comes from MCM Comic Con in London, where I've been speaking and signing stuff myself. But there's one panel I'm particularly interested in, and I know that viewers of this channel will be interested in it. It's a panel all about how the BBC team put together the Doctor Who The Collection Blu-ray box sets with a special emphasis on season 26. And I'm about to go into that panel over there at the centre stage. Let's go and have a look.
Hello everybody. These panels are all going to be very brief, so let's not waste our time on long introductions. Apart from getting on the teams that we're going to be talking to, the geniuses behind the Doctor Who Blu-ray collections that are coming out, please welcome, in no particular order, Mark Ayres, Sound Master, Cliff Chapman, Documentary Guru, Paul Vanezis, Picture Academician, so Russell Minton, Chief Everything, and Lee Binding, Artist in Residence. So yes, it's going to be very intimate. We're not going to be behind the sofa, we're all going to be squeezed onto it. Mark's brought some things along. We've got some exclusive clips for you, but I suppose we need to come up to speed with the man in charge. Russell, tell us about the history behind, the influence behind, and everything we need to know to get us to this point in the Blu-ray collection releases.
Is this working? Oh, it's working. Yeah. Excellent. We're on the tight sofa. You've got the nice sofa.
Lovely sofa.
So, well, I mean, it wasn't a new idea particularly. And I think, like Paul and the restoration team guys had pitched it before. I know Dan Hall had pitched it when he ran the range. And I guess it was just a bit of timing, good timing. And when I sort of put the idea together, in conjunction with all these guys and a lot of other people, we wanted to make it, very collectible, like a set of encyclopedias, so it looks nice on the shelf, fill in the gaps of any VAM, and then the most important thing, make it look and sound, the episodes sound the best they could be. So we did a bit of research, found out that was possible, with obviously the likes of Peter and Mark, and then we got the sign off to do the first one, which was obviously season 12.
And Mark, you come in at that point, so what are the specific things you need to think about when approaching something for Blu-ray?
Well, Blu-ray is uncompressed sound. That means it's not like MP3, it's actually proper. So it has to sound better. You get away with a lot on Blu-ray, on DVD, because it's compressed, a bit like MP3 files. So anything above about 14 kilohertz frequency range gets rolled off, but on Blu-ray it's all there. So you have to make sure it's all clean and uncompressed and lovely. So I'm really sort of starting again on everything.
And you're going to show us some of that in a bit. But
yes.
First, I think we're going to have an exclusive, because we can talk about the next one that's been announced, which is season 26.
Yes.
And Chris Chapman.
You have to be so careful.
Chris, yes, I can't tell them about.
Not the one after.
About the new version of Shada made with Dapple figures. That's an exclusive for another Comic-Con. But Chris, you have made many documentaries. We're going to show a clip from the writer's room.
Okay.
So we're going to show the writer's room clip, and then you're going to tell us about some of the influences behind what you do. But this is the first time we've done a clip, so let's see how it all works. Because we're just going to work his magic about now.
Amazing.
There are worlds out there where the sky is burning, where the seas asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Some of there's danger, some of there's injustice, somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace, we've got work to do.
I didn't even watch it go out for all sorts of reasons.
Superstition, chiefly.
And also I think I was frightened. Yeah, I was frightened. And then I didn't really watch it since. And then I was left with this ridiculous sense, well, it's not ridiculous actually, and you'll all pile in and confirm it, with this sense of kind of terrible, not responsibility, but like, mine was the last one aired and then it got cancelled. And I wasn't stupid enough to think, oh, if only I'd written my episodes better, we might not have been cancelled. But I did feel really strongly that Who, of all the TV shows, has a fan base like no other. And I just felt they deserved a better sign-off. I always thought, if I'd known... No, let me finish. I always thought, if I'd known,
that's true.
I would have written that. And in fact, the very last scene Andrew had to write because I wasn't even in the country. if I'd known it was going to be the last one ever,
Well, you could have built it around that.
I would have tried to make it a fitting swan song. And certainly when I came back to it, when we sat down for the read-through for Eaters of Light from the last Capaldi series, and before we started the read-through, Stephen Moffat says, so here we are, and we're risking everything because we're doing another script by the woman that the last time we did one of her scripts, who wasn't on the air for 15 years, but hey, let's just go for it.
Thanks, Steve.
And then I came back and looked at it and went, that's all right, actually, which I bet would have been your reaction
more than
if
all
you
right.
just never looked at it between then and now.
No, yours was way better.
Yeah, yours is way better than mine. No, it just was at a script level.
So Chris, they're your writers' rooms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so no, that was really fun. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, we've done a series called The Writers' Room, where we try and bring together anybody who's still around from the writing team. And 26 is such a perfect place to do that, because I should have introduced them before. Obviously you've got people like, you've got Andrew Cartmull, the script editor, you've got Mark Platt, Ben Aronovich, Ian Briggs, Rona Munro, and just getting them back together. They were such a team of writers at that point. I think in the past, I don't know how much writers actually met each other. It would be all via the script editor. And with season 26, there's such a feeling of young, hungry, excitable writers full of ideas, really wanting to do their best work on the show. So it was really a privilege to get them back together, and there's kind of 35 minutes of chat of them just talking through the whole thing, and they're so lovely together, they're so reassuring. And I think to hear them, what you probably don't hear in other things that we've done, is to hear them talk about each other's stories, to hear what they think about, what Mark Platt thinks about Battlefield, or what the others think about Survivor. Kind of gives it a different spin. So that was mainly just trying to get their schedules to work, to get them all in the same room together, but then we just let them play and just gave them lots of food and drink, and it was lovely. It was a lovely day, really nice day.
It's the first time, isn't it, that there was a kind of writers' room at the time?
Yeah.
Because before it was all individual writers, and Andrew did get writers together, and they did talk about what they wanted to do throughout the series.
Yeah, and you have that lovely dovetailing, because you get people like Mark Platt. Mark had written the novelisation of Battlefield, so was more familiar with Ben's script, and I think it's the best one that we've done of that series. I think it's the one where there's more that you learn, and you see more of their interaction in an interesting way. So I hope people enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, and one of the things you know is if you thought Ghostlight was complicated, try having the writer explain it while eating a giant sausage roll. Because,
we love sausage rolls on these films.
Don't
And on that, we always seem to. People on the last one got really, really fixated on the sausage rolls. They were like, well, it's just food, nice food in a pub.
It's very carb heavy.
Yeah.
Shall we see the trailer for this upcoming box set? Because Russell, one of the things, the amazing things about Doctor Who is even the trailer for a product, you go the extra mile and also add to the mythology of the show.
Well, yeah, and it sort of came about by accident, because we were doing the one for season 19, and I don't know where I was when it came into my head that why don't we do a sort of fun trailer to announce the show with? And I texted Pete McTighe, who writes for obviously his Jodie series, and said, well, I've got this idea to do a trailer with Janet as an air hostess, because we were filming, or Chris was filming Time Flight at the Concorde at the Manchester Runway Park, wasn't it? So anyway, 10 minutes later it came back, and that was the trailer, and I was like, this is really funny. So I said to Chris, do you think we could fit it in? And then it seemed to go down quite well on the Doctor Who YouTube channel. So yeah, then we thought, well, what can we do for the next one? And that's how it's evolved, really. And then with this one, we just we thought we wanted to do it with Sophie, because she never really got a proper outro, as it were. And Pete had already got something in mind, so we managed to fit it in with filming her in conversation, which Paul did. So it's all trying to make the budget work and fit things around everybody's schedules.
So we're going to show that in a second, and then Lee's going to talk us through the cover. Mark's going to talk us through the set. Mark wasn't being unprofessional there. I've just had a missed call from Fraser Hines. He took the call, but that means Jamie is in the building. More of that later.
Actually, Jamie's not in the building. Jamie is trying to get into the building.
Well, he is from a long time ago. This is going to be Mark's PowerPoint. Mark Ayres' PowerPoint.
The collection PowerPoint, please. Mark Ayres' collection PowerPoint.
In terms of a picture, Paul Vanezis over there, who's been suffering in silence. So we think of something, the black and whites, we can see all the palpable changes because the old VHSs look like you were watching them through gravy, whereas, the season 26 was only a couple of years ago. So what are the specific requirements when sorting out the pictures for something a bit more recent?
Well, okay. Well, it wasn't a couple of years ago, was it? It was about 30 years ago.
That was humour suggesting how old we all are.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are people here who probably weren't around then. The big problem with a lot of those old analog tapes is just reducing noise, and also correcting camera alignment problems. So they're the things that you wouldn't really notice on a VHS tape, that you might not even notice on the original broadcast, but on a modern plasma screen or an LCD, or people have got 4K TVs these days, all those little misregistration problems are things that detract from your experience as a viewer. You notice them more, and we are trying to minimise you noticing those technical problems, so you will get to enjoy these programmes hopefully in a better way. So sound and vision, obviously, are the two key things. That's our senses, that we take everything in, and we want everything to look absolutely perfect and sharp and pristine, and you enjoy it better. You enjoy it more.
Well, and after Mark, we're going to come to you, Lee, and it's going to be Lee's VT, not his PowerPoint. That's just the technical talk.
But
Mark's PowerPoint, you can introduce it, Mark.
I'll very quickly talk you through this. So the first slide, can we go back to PowerPoint? There we go, that's the first slide. You've just watched the trailer. That is my mix edit for the trailer. So as well as restoring all the episodes, I mixed up the documentaries, the behind the sofas and things, and I also mixed the trailers. So that's how many lanes there are in just the trailer that you've just watched. There's a couple of narration tracks at the top, and various music tracks, and dots and loads of sound effects and things, and all those squiggly lines, that's automation. That's making faders pop up and down, and equalisation coming in and out, all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to very quickly go through this. Did my clicker work just now? Oh, there we go. Right, that is the original theme master for Sylvester McCoy's theme music. That's the box. That's the side of the box, so that's Kev's master. So one of the things we do is we go back as far as we can to original masters to make it sound as best as we possibly can. That is a partial, and I say partial, that is a partial list of all the sound effects I created and remastered for season 23. So that is only a partial list. So I go back to all the sound effects, original sound effects, and create surround sound versions, various stereo versions, various perspective versions. So that all becomes part of a track lay. The other thing I do, that is a mono, that I think that's actually Planet of the Daleks episode 1. One thing you'll notice on that's what's called a spectrum display. So instead of a waveform, if it's brighter, it's louder, and its top frequencies at the top and bass frequencies at the bottom. So I can actually look at it as a spectral display, and I can cut things out and move them around almost as if it's Photoshop. That line at the top, that long line at the top, is a 15 kilohertz whine, which is on all masters of that age, and it's the sound of the TV cameras whining. So the first thing I do on these masters, because that can be heard on Blu-ray and it couldn't be heard on DVD, the first thing I do is take that out. So also, some very simple things like that onwards. This is a basic remaster. This is Kinder Remaster. That's episode 1. So you can see at the top the orange line with all the cuts in it. That's the episode cut up, and everything where there's an edit, that's something I've taken off into an application to treat, to remove a pop or a click or whatever. And as you can see down the bottom, the green dots, I replaced the theme music from the master. So that is, that's the opening of Castrovalva, where you can see I've rebuilt all the effects and the titles to make it sound better again, because the original was a bit hissy. That's Ark in Space, 5.1 mix, so you can see that's the hibernation room where I've created a surround sound effect. That is Trial of a Time Lord, episodes 1 to 4, 5.1 mix track lay. Every little dot is a sound effect or something that I've added in. But anyway, this is what I do. Sound.
Yeah.
So it's all bonkers.
I'm going to take your word for it. I think the secret code in there saying kill the humans. It's all his plan. Well, let's leap over to Lee Bindings, VT, if we may. Lee, you're going to talk us through how you make the fantastic Blu-ray covers that we've all come to love and associate with the range that have a sort of universal theme, and we're going to see those in action. Lee Binding's Blu-ray VT, if that is going to pop up whilst all these waveform. It might not happen, in which case
I'll vamp.
Here we are.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So with the Blu-ray covers, I'm trying to make them as things you've never seen before. So this is how I start. I wanted to start with the body. When you've got to clean it up. These pictures are sort of like 30 years old. So what I get it out, I clean it up, I paint over the top. And this is a good example of it. So this is the picture I wanted. This is the color base that I used. And then when you put the detail on the top, I paint all over the top on that. And then once you've got that, you've got the head. Now I gave him a bit of a smile because Sylvester McCoy has to have that little twinkle. Then you start putting it together. And you do that with all these elements, go through it. It takes about 3-4 weeks just to do the cover. And once you've got that, you can then start putting it into the templates. And that's when it's sort of like, you've got to make it start looking a little bit more season 26. So in this case, it's going to be asteroids, it's going to be purples, it's going to be vortexes, and then you get your monsters on there, and then you're done. That is your cover. That is 3 weeks work, and you're Sylvester McCoy.
How about that? Russell, when it comes to the extras, you're sort of doing extras because we've already had extras on the DVD range.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts when providing material, and what did you have available to you?
I mean, I think the main thing is, you know, look at each set, what exists already, fill in the gaps, so any making ofs that are missing, anybody we didn't interview. So like for season 23, we're really keen to get Bonnie Langford to do an interview, but she's so busy. So I started talking to her about 6 months in advance, managed to get a day when she was available, or 2 days when she was available, and then we could obviously do the Doctor's Table, which Chris brilliantly did as a new strand, the In Conversation that Paul did, and then she also did Behind the Sofa. And I think that's the thing, it's trying to think what adds value, what do you guys want to hear about, and then also, for me, with my entertainment background, it's trying to make it fun, really. That's the most important thing for me. Oh, you know, seeing the stars in a different way, telling a different story, but with a lighter feel to it.
Well, and one of the major attractions on the season 26 is an epic documentary on the Curse of Fenric. So how did that come about? So
Pete McTighe, again, who wrote the trailer, he really wanted to do that one because it's his favourite Doctor Who story, depending on what day of the week you ask him. He told me to say that. So yeah, we really wanted to go back to the location. I know Chris feels like this, that if you take the actors back to the location, number one, it looks great, and number two, I think sometimes you evoke more memories rather than just straightforward talking heads. So we're very keen to go back to Lulworth, the army camp and the church, and that's what we did.
Well, let's take a look at a bit of the Curse of Fenric documentary.
I think the Curse of Fenric is a story that's very beloved of fans and of myself. I think the basic thing is the storytelling is so good.
The thing about season 26 is we really will get it right by then, I feel. I mean, you can, everybody has their own reaction to it, but I will stand by that season as representing our intentions and successfully representing them.
I think it's very difficult to say that you have any favourite story. I think everyone in the business really feels the same. They'd always like to go back and do it one more time and get it absolutely right. But I do have a few stories that I'm very fond of, and I like Curse of Fenric.
It's very emotional and has some really big themes going on. It's about faith. It's about everybody questioning their faith in love, really, love of God, Ace's love of her mother, and I think it deals with those themes extremely well, and as a result, The Curse of Fenric is an exceptional storyline.
Nothing can ever be perfect. Everything is always going to be compromised. That making television is always that impossible. And we did what was possible, and I think we did in some miraculous way, we did more than was possible. And the imperfections just kind of seems to be important and melt away. I'll say.
I think Sylvester was a splendid Doctor because he built up a wonderful rapport with Sophie Aldred, who played Ace. And I think you can actually sense that on screen. There's an on-screen chemistry between the two of them. So I was delighted with them as a couple. And in some ways I think it's probably the best doctor-companion relationship that I had during my entire period.
Mark, of course, as well as preparing it for you worked on the original Cursor, but you're Nostalgia now.
I am Nostalgia, yes, I'm my own tribute band. Yes, I did work on wrote music for the original and for Ghostlight, and it was really wonderful to be able to revisit those two stories, particularly for me this time around, yeah.
Is there any temptation to go, oh, I could put an extra sting in there? You know what that'd do to the internet?
I did that, of course, when we did the special edition of Fenric, which has been revised and tweaked on this box set to sound a bit bigger. But that was, I revisited the score totally on that. And of course we've done the work print edition of Ghostlight on this, which, because unfortunately there are no masters surviving, we've had to take it from VHS copies, or why there's a little sort of mask over the time code at times. But we have been able to do like a sort of full cut for the first time of Ghostlight and put all the deleted scenes back in some ways. That's been enormous fun to do as well.
But Paul, where do you draw the line? Because it's possible, isn't it? Because there's been this VHS version, that repeat. You could have about 9 versions of the same story on one disc, which some fans would probably like.
And the rest.
I would like that, yeah. I don't see any reason why not, because we've got the space now on Blu-ray, and I know we've put on lots of studio material in the past. I mean, we've got, for Caves of Androzani, for example, which is Peter Davison's last story, we've got one studio recording which is about 70 minutes long, and most people have only ever seen about maybe 2 or 3 minutes of that, because we've used it in clips here and there, and actually it's a really good recording to tell you about how television is made. So I think that would be great to put on that season when it eventually happens. It's those kind of things, it's not just the episodes, it's everything else.
The record so far is 3 versions.
3, yeah.
So Fenric, Battlefield and Terror of the Vermont, 3 versions of each so far.
And what about the extra stuff, Chris? I mean, and that wasn't your documentary, but when it comes to a lot of them have had making ofs done already. So how do you approach what you're going to suggest to Russell?
Yeah, I think it is a case of looking at the DVDs and saying, and a lot of the time, a season will have had making ofs for everything because of when it was released in the DVD range. Other times not. I think it's about redressing the balance often and remembering how much there'll always be somebody out there for whom this was a defining moment in their Doctor Who experience. So something like season 23, the DVD box set was really comprehensive and had making ofs and had a really great documentary by Ed Stradling about the behind-the-scenes woes that were going on, and I looked at that and said, well, we can't beat that, we can't tell those stories again. But I think of Trial as it was the first Doctor Who I remember seeing, and I have a lot of love and joy, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had if you don't know about all that behind-the-scenes stuff. So our special features on that box set, I was trying to make as joyful as we can, to try and say, okay, let's make these just fun then, and redress the balance of the more of the tougher, darker moments that are already there. So we did, like, I don't know if people have seen, we did like a Doctor Who cookbook revisited with Toby, and the Doctor's Table is very joyful, bringing people together. If we found a season where the special features had already been made and they were more silly and fun, we might say, okay, well, we need to go a bit more serious then. But I think it's all about getting a balance that comes from the heart and is genuinely affectionate but honest about what that season was, and does so in as varied a way as we can.
And if you have seen the cookbook documentary, I'd just like to point out, I do have more than one suit.
And it is actually your kitchen. We've had a few people saying, is that you can tell, because he's got a little metal thing that says security kitchen, which is the geekiest, like,
I've got a landing called Dinsdale Landing.
Yes. It can only be your house, Toby. It can only be.
So Lee, is there anything about the sort of tone of each particular season that influences your work, or is it more trying to universalise it?
Oh yeah, Pertwee's always green.
Green.
No, you sort of. Weirdly, there is a colour to each. Do you find that? Everybody sort of got an idea of what a certain story should look like, whether it's a colour or a tone or something. And you kind of take the median of that, and that feeds into what you do, and you've got to represent as much as possible. And ideally, what you end up with is a perfect slice of that series on your shelf. And that's what I'm aiming for. And if I get halfway there, then I'm happy, but I want to get all the way there.
Now, Russell, one of the sort of bespoke and most associated ranges that go with these Blu-ray releases is something very close to your heart, and I think the two-line picture is Goggle Box with Doctor Who people, and it's behind the sofa, and we've got a bit of the one on Battlefield that's coming up, so we're going to show a clip of Behind the Sofa Does Battlefield. So you have a lot of fun doing those.
Yeah. And I think that the beauty of it is you can get almost anybody in to look at other people's seasons. I think it's funny because when I talked to the Davison panel, they preferred to do other people's than watch themselves, actually, because you were being reactive rather than just remembering. So yeah, we've got loads of ideas for those to come, hopefully.
And you've started introducing new series writers for you.
Yeah, and I think that's nice. Well, Pete's a classic series fan. Joy remembers some of it, but I think seeing their perspectives just adds to it. And that's the first time we've done 3 sofas. And I think we might do that again, because actually, and it's slightly differently edited this time, so it's a bit quicker. So I think you saw that with the garden comment, so I think we'll do lots more of that, because it makes it a bit more funny.
I'm tempted to pitch a documentary called The Gardens of Doctor Who Companions.
Who do you want to host it?
You should joke about these things, Toby.
That's true. Well, Chris, your documentaries have tended to, one strand of them, look at people who can't speak for themselves now, and we're going to show a clip in a minute. But talk us through your big one that you've got coming up on John Nathan Turner.
Yeah, so this is, certainly for me, it's the biggest one that we've ever done. And it's a very epic, really emotionally epic story of John Nathan Turner's life. It's 82 minutes long. We interviewed 18 people. I filmed all around the country, and I filmed in Spain and all this kind of stuff. And it was me looking at John's life and saying, actually, I think there's something to be done that can be kind and compassionate and candid, but that gives John his due at the same time. I think to be able to tell, I think John lived a very television life, and it was a rise and fall in almost like at the level of a Greek tragedy in a way. So it's a big one for us, and I'm really proud of how it's turned out. It took over like about half of my year in some way, and I think we're going to show a clip of, just to introduce, this is a lady called Liz Rowell, who I think we do introduce on screen, but this is kind of early on in John's career when he was a production assistant around the BBC. And this is, a lot of people will know John for his more flamboyant side of life and his relationship with Gary Downey. And this is a very different side to John that hasn't been talked about so much. That's in the clip we're going to see.
So yeah, it's the showman John Nathan Turner.
Yeah.
After The Palaces, John was asked to work on a big, prestigious classic serial called How Green Was My Valley. And one of the people he really bonded with and looked out for was the makeup designer, Liz Rowell.
I had heard a lot of rumours about John, how outrageous he was, but he was lovely. He was so nice. He used to pull everybody together, and we became very friendly.
There was a rumour that he had started to become very fond and attached to a makeup girl, and quite a few of us were quite surprised about that.
I obviously knew he was gay when I first met him. I thought he was so lovely, I really fancied him, and he did me as well, much to my surprise. And we ended up having a very nice affair, and when we were in the studios, he would kiss me behind the scenery. It was wonderful. I had a little attic flat in Ealing. On a Saturday, they always used to finish rehearsing at about 1 o'clock, so John would come round to my flat and spend the afternoon. After one night, he said to me, "Do you know, dear, you're the first lady I've ever had." We had a wonderful few months, and he loved me and I loved him. And I know he did. I know he did. Unfortunately, it didn't last. I had a friend in Barbados Gary was away, and we decided we would go together. But unfortunately, at the airport, in fact, we were sitting on the runway, and John said to me, "I'm sorry, Liz," he said, "but I really don't love you anymore." And that was a terrible bombshell, to think that I had 3 weeks with him. We had a 3-week holiday planned, and that's the first thing that he said.
There was a rumour that he had gone on holiday, and it seemed to coincide with him coming back and wearing his colourful shirts. And they're very colourful, nobody else had them in the department, so he always stood out in them.
And then one day he rang me and said, "Do you fancy a drink?" But it was very interesting because whenever I had a drink with John, which wasn't that often, but if we would meet for a drink, Gary would always come, would always turn up, which I don't blame him.
It's difficult to know whether the dynamics between John and Gary meant that John was playing a bit of a game with Liz, maybe making Gary feel a bit jealous. You know, the games that go on in relationships are always difficult to analyse from outside, but people have suggested that that might have been an element to it.
I don't regret any of the time with John. It was a wonderful time of my life.
And on that, we did have one more clip, but we haven't got time for it. But Russell, you can maybe tell us a little bit about what it is, and also you've got something to tell the audience about the future of the range and things that they might be excited by.
It's not the next box set announcement, unfortunately. So just let's say thank you very much to everyone who supports the range. That enables us all to carry on, have the fun we are, and so thank you to everyone. Also, thanks to all the team who aren't here today. So lots of people worked tirelessly, Richard Bignall, and loads of people. But just to say that obviously there was a shortfall. Season 12, which is our first one, was a bit of a trial, and we made less of those in the limited edition packaging. So we are going to do a short run of extra amount of those. So keep your eyes peeled for that announcement soon.
So if you haven't got season 12, you can buy it. If you bought it for £1,000 off eBay, I'm very sorry indeed. Please show your appreciation for Lee Binding, Russell Minton, Paul Vanezis, Cliff Chapman, and Mark Ayres.
Well, that was great, wasn't it? I'm particularly excited about that season 12 reprint news because it's the only box set I never managed to get. So if you never managed to get it as well, I hope you're now relieved that you don't have to pay 500 quid for it on eBay, which I've certainly resisted doing. Thank you so much for watching. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to maybe support this channel or any of the other free stuff I pump out into the internet. Have a look down there in the video description. Hope you enjoyed watching, and don't forget to embrace your obsessions.